Hello. Okay, so yesterday you should have figured out what a radian is. So just a way to kind of explain it a little more. So like if you were measuring, um, if I wanted you to measure the length of a wall, you can measure that in feet, you can measure it in inches, you can measure it in yards. So if I wanted to measure an angle, so um, if I wanted you to measure an angle, you would probably say, oh, well, an angle measurement, you would say it's 90 degrees or 60 degrees. So angle measurements can be in degrees. And then yesterday we learned they can also be measured in radians. So for example, let's say that you have a circle that has a radius of, let's say, 4. So if I take this length 4 and I take it and I measure it around the outside of this circle. So this is also a length of 4. This angle measure in here, this guy, is 1 radian. And so instead of saying it's a certain amount of degrees, you just say it's 1 radian. Okay, so that's all you need to know for that part. Okay, so then if we have a circle, and again, this is all review from yesterday still. So let's just say that this is, okay, we'll do 4 again. How many of these radii will it take to get over here? So I'm going to take this 4. I'm going to go 1. You should all be shouting at your computer screens like the guy was yesterday. So here's 1. Here's 2. Here's 3. And then just a little more. So in half a circle, oops, there are how many radians? Oh, a little more than 3, which is also known as pi. So pi radians. So now let's pretend I wanted you, instead of finding in radians, I want to know how many degrees this is. So in an entire circle, how many degrees are there? 360. So how many are going to be in half of a circle? 180. So let me write that quick. A full circle equals 360 degrees. A half circle equals 180 degrees. So that means that 180 degrees is the exact same as pi radians because they are both half of a circle. So that's kind of like saying, just a little side note, 12 inches equals 1 foot. So saying 180 degrees equals pi radians is the same as saying 12 inches equals 1 foot. So this measures length, this measures degrees. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to convert from, which way are we going today? We are going to go from degrees to radians. So let's see. So converting from degrees to radians. This is what your homework is going to be about. So if you are a note taker, this is where you want to take notes. And this will be on your assessment on Friday. And for some reason, I cannot get this to go straight. Hang on a second. Go this way. Okay, so this pretty important. Okay, so we discussed above that 180 degrees equals pi radians. So we can set that up as a ratio. So we can say that pi radians over 180 degrees. Oh, by the way, so we have 180 degrees. Degrees is your label. Up here, radians is your label. So you can't just put pi, you have to put pi radians. So radians is your label. So radians is similar to feet, inches, centimeters, and so is degrees. So degrees your label, radians are your label. So you can set up a ratio like this, or you can set up a ratio like this. Okay, so both of these things are true. So let's do some examples of how we can convert. So examples. So let's say I want to know how many radians are in, let's do 90 degrees. Okay, so what we're going to do, we are going to set up a ratio. So you're going to put an equal sign. You are going to put 2 fraction bars. So this is really important on how you set this up. Whatever you are trying to find, put in the top left. So trying to find, that I want you to put here. So right now this is asking me how many radians. Okay, so we're going to put whenever you're trying to find something, you label it as a variable. So we're just going to call this x. And then in your denominator is what you already know. So trying to find goes on the top. What you know goes in the bottom. And we know it's 90 degrees. So trying to find goes on top, what you know goes on the bottom. So now when you set up this ratio, we are either going to put this right here, or we're going to put this one right here. So now to figure out which one it is, your degrees have to either both be on the top or your degrees both have to be on the bottom. So since you have degrees on the bottom here, you have to have degrees here. So here's degree. So you have to have a degree here. Okay, so which one of these two has a degree in the bottom? Well, that's 180. So we're going to do 180 goes here. And if you have radians on the top, because that's what we're trying to find, you have to have radians on the top, which is going to be pi radians. Okay, so that is how you set it up. So now we have to solve. So we have x over 90 equals pi radians over 180 degrees. And look at that, I forgot my label over here. Okay, so if you have x here, how do I solve for it? Well, I have to get rid of this 90. So I need to multiply both sides by 90 times 90. These two things cross out. So I'm left with x equals pi radians over 180 equals 90. Oh, sorry, not equals, times. Okay, so now, hold on, I ran out of paper. We have to solve this. Or simplify, I guess we already solved. We have to simplify. Okay, so before you multiply this, technically 90 is just 90 over 1. So you can cross simplify. So I have pi radians and I have 1. Okay, neither of those simplify. But I have 180 and 90. 90 goes into both of those. So I can cross this out and cross this out. 90 goes into 90 one time. 90 goes into 180 two times. So I just simplified it. 1 over 1 is just 1. So you are left with pi radians over 2. So x equals pi over 2 radians. So I just put radians out here because usually you just have your label at the very end. So you don't put it within the fraction. Okay, so let's try another one. Okay, so examples. We'll do a couple and that'll be it. So let's say how many radians are in, we'll do dot, dot, dot. Here's number 1. Let's go with 60 degrees. Number 2, we will do, let's do 210 degrees. And 3, let's do 315. Okay, so step 1, you have to set up your ratio. So you have a fraction bar, you have an equal sign, you have a fraction bar. What goes in the top left? Okay, what you're trying to find. So we just call that an x. What goes on the bottom? Well, that's what we know. So for number 1, we know it's 60 degrees, so that goes here. Okay, then you have to figure out which ratio or which way does your ratio go over here. Well, if I have 60 degrees in the denominator, I have to have degrees in the denominator here. So 180. And then what goes on top of 180? Pi. All right, and then you need to solve. So I need to multiply both sides by 60. These two things cross out. So I'm left with x equals, oh, look at me go. Forgot a label again. Sorry. So now we need to simplify. 60 over 180. So 60 goes into 60 one time. 60 goes into 180 3 times. So I'm left with pi over 3 radians. Okay, number 1 is done. 210 degrees, so same thing, we're trying to find goes on the top, what you know goes on the bottom. We're going to put 180 on the bottom here, so what goes on the top? It's going to be pi radians. And then we need to multiply both sides by 210. These cross out. I need to do a little bit of simplifying here. Oh, let's see. I can cross out the zeros. If I divide them both by 10, you end up with 21 over 18. Divide both of these by 3, and I get 7 over 6. So this turns into a 6. This turns into a 7. So I am left with 7 pi over 6 radians. All right, last one. I'm just going to scooch down here. So 315 degrees. Okay, what you want to find goes on the top left. So there you put x. On the bottom is what you know. So we know it's 315 degrees. So 180 degrees goes here. And then pi radians goes on top. Multiply both sides by 315. These two things cross out. So you have x equals, oh boy, what goes into both of these? I think 3 does. So if I take 180 divided by 3, I get 60. So I'm going to turn this into a 60. If I take 315 divided by 3, I get 105. Okay, but those can simplify even further because 5 goes into both of them. So if I divide this by 5, I get 21. If I divide this by 5, I get 12. Oh boy. And I can go even further. So what goes into both of these two numbers? That'd be a 3. So this turns into a 7, and this turns into a 4. So, sorry, that's kind of messy. But I have pi and 7 in the numerator and a 4 in the denominator. So that is going to be 7 pi over 4 radians. Okay, that's all you have for today. There's an IXL link on the calendar that you need to complete. And then tomorrow we are going to convert going in the other direction.